The man had been living in a graveyard for years. Among the tombs, outside the city, beyond the boundary of everything normal, he had broken every chain used to restrain him. He screamed through the night. He cut himself with stones. When Jesus stepped off the boat and the man came running toward him, Jesus asked one question: "What is your name?" The answer: "My name is Legion, for we are many." A Roman legion was between 3,000 and 6,000 soldiers. For a Jewish person under Roman occupation, that word was not military vocabulary. It was the word for the force that controlled your roads, your markets, your ability to exist freely. When this entity named itself Legion, it chose the most loaded word available to a first-century Jewish audience. And then it begged. It did not fight. It did not threaten. It begged Jesus not to send it out of the region. That detail is the most important sentence in the passage, because whatever Legion was, whatever it had done to that man for years, it was terrified of one person standing on a shoreline. That is what this list is built around. Every named demonic figure in the biblical record has a meaning embedded in its original language: Hebrew, Greek, Persian, Aramaic. And when you go back to what the words actually said, before the translations, before the mythology, the terror level changes completely. We are going from the bottom to the top, and I promise you the one at number 1 is not the one you expect. Let's begin. Number 7. Belial, without profit, without value. Belial is a compound Hebrew word. Beli means without. Ya'al means profit or use. It appears 27 times in the Old Testament, almost never as a named entity. It is a description of people. Sons of Belial, men of Belial. The priests Hophni and Phinehas, appointed to serve in the tabernacle of God, are called sons of Belial in 1 Samuel 2:12. Not foreign enemies, priests. The text gives the reason immediately: they did not know the Lord. Belial is not something entering from outside. It is what forms on the inside when a person drains meaning from their own life through accumulated small choices. By the Dead Sea Scrolls, written roughly 200 years before Christ, Belial had become a full entity, prince of darkness, leader of the forces of evil. Then Paul uses the name once in 2 Corinthians 6:15, set in direct opposition to Christ. One verse, one name. The terror of Belial is not spectacle, it is gradient. A life lived without moral orientation does not simply drift, it arrives somewhere specific, and that specific somewhere, the ancient writers insisted, has a name. Number 6, the Seirim, the hairy ones, the goat demons. Leviticus 17:7 contains a command: the Israelites must stop making sacrifices to the Seirim. The command only makes sense if some of them had been doing exactly that. 2 Chronicles 11:15 confirms it. Jeroboam appointed priests for the Seirim. Isaiah 13:21 uses the same word to describe what will inhabit the ruins of Babylon after its destruction. Not people, not animals. Seirim, dancing in the rubble. The ancient Near Eastern worldview divided space into ordered and chaotic. Where God's order held, life was possible. Where it had withdrawn, in wilderness, in ruins, at the edges, something else moved in. The Seirim were the theological name for the ecology of disorder, not invaders. The native species of what lives in unguarded places. The Targums, ancient Aramaic translations used in synagogue, render Seirim consistently as demons, and the Yom Kippur scapegoat was sent into the wilderness, into their territory, carrying something back. If you have never been taught any of this, if these names have always been background furniture in a story you were told not to examine, this channel exists to fix that. Subscribe. Hit the bell. Back to the list. Number 5. Asmodeus, the wrath demon. The Book of Tobit is deuterocanonical, included in Catholic and Orthodox Bibles, foundational in early Christian theology, regularly cited in the Talmud. A woman named Sarah had been married 7 times. On each wedding night, before the marriage was consummated, Asmodeus killed her husband. 7 men, 7 wedding nights. Sequential targeted destruction at the exact threshold moment when a new life was supposed to begin. The name comes from ancient Persian. Ashma means wrath. Deva means demon. The 16th century demonologist Peter Binsfeld assigned him to lust, the opposite of wrath. That contradiction is the point. Wrath and desire fused produce the most precise destruction, reaching for something and annihilating it in the act of reaching. The Talmud records a second story. Solomon, building the first temple, needed to cut stone without iron tools. God had commanded it. The only solution: capture Asmodeus and compel him to reveal the knowledge needed. The temple of God was completed with coerced demonic assistance. The sacred and the terrifying occupied the same architecture. Number 4. Azazel, complete removal, strong departure. Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. The high priest casts lots over 2 goats. One is sacrificed for God. The other receives something different, both hands laid on it. Every sin of every person in Israel confessed over it, the weight of collective guilt transferred into one animal. Then it is led into the wilderness and thrown from a cliff. The Hebrew word Azazel appears 3 times in Leviticus 16 and nowhere else in the Torah. The Brown-Driver-Briggs lexicon renders it complete removal. By the late Second Temple period, the Book of Enoch named Azazel as the leader of the Watchers, the fallen sons of God from Genesis 6, the ones who crossed the divine human boundary. He taught humanity to make weapons. He ends up bound in a desert wasteland, waiting. What the ritual was declaring every year is this: your sins are not simply forgiven. They are returned to where they came from. The holiest ceremony in Judaism acknowledged that human sin has a named source, and once a year, the most holy man in Israel sent it back. Number 3. Beelzebub, originally Lord of the High Place, deliberately corrupted to Lord of the Flies. 2 Kings 1. King Ahaziah is injured and sends messengers to consult the god of the Philistine city of Ekron. Elijah intercepts them. He does not debate whether the deity exists. He condemns the consultation as betrayal. The name Baal-zebub, Lord of the Flies, is almost certainly a scribal corruption. The original Philistine title was Baal-zebul. Zebul means divine dwelling, the heavenly throne, Lord of the heavenly seat. The Hebrew scribes changed one letter. Zebul became Zebub. A celestial title became a word for insects and decay. They embedded mockery directly into the text. Every reading of the name was a reading of their contempt for what it represented. By the New Testament, the original form Beelzebul resurfaces as the ruling prince of all demons. In Matthew 12, the Pharisees accused Jesus of exercising by Beelzebul's power. Jesus does not deny his authority. He makes the logical argument and then says, "If I drive out demons by the Spirit of God, the kingdom of God has come upon you." He began as a worship god with a temple and a city, was reduced by one letter to a lord of filth, and adapted. He kept operating. That is its own kind of terrifying. I grew up around these names: church, Sunday school, youth group. They were always in the background. The implicit message was consistent: believe in them enough to stay cautious, but not enough to actually investigate what they mean. The names were warning signs, not invitations. Then I started reading the original languages. What I found was not mythology dressed as religion. The ancient writers were encoding something precise, a map of exactly how human beings are taken apart. Not through force, through knowing what each person loves, and moving through that opening. The name tells you the method. That realization restructured how I read everything. It is why these videos exist. One entry left. This one requires your full attention. Number 1. Hallel ben Shakar, the Shining One, Son of Dawn. Isaiah 14:12. King James Version. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? Open the Hebrew. The word Lucifer is not there. What is there? Hallel ben Shakar, the Shining One, Son of Dawn. The word Hallel appears exactly once in the entire Hebrew Bible. This verse, nowhere else. It comes from halal, to shine, to praise, to boast. Jerome translated it into Latin in the 4th century, Lucifer. A common noun, lux, light, fere, to carry, light bearer. In Latin, Lucifer named Venus appearing on the eastern horizon just before sunrise. Not a proper name, a description. The King James translators capitalized it. A name was born from an adjective that had never been a name. Isaiah 14 is a taunt directed at the king of Babylon. A ruler who had compared himself to the gods, believed he was ascending, saw himself as the brightest thing in the sky, and collapsed. The morning star image is precise. Venus blazes alone in the pre-dawn darkness, brighter than anything, and disappears the moment the actual sun arrives. It cannot survive in real light. It only appears to lead when the dawn has not yet come. Early Christian interpreters read this alongside Luke 10:18, Jesus saying he saw Satan fall like lightning, and fused them. Hallel became Satan. The taunt became biography. Here is why this lands at number 1, not the translation history. Because of what the image means. The primary force of deception in the biblical record was not named after darkness, not destruction, not void. Named after the brightest light in the pre-dawn sky. The thing that looks exactly like the sunrise. That blazes and promises the day is finally here, and it is not the sun. 2 Corinthians 11:14, Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. The name describes the method. The method is not darkness. The method is light, convincing, beautiful, orienting light. That is not the source. Look at the full list. Belial is the erosion of meaning through small choices. The Seorim inhabit whatever you leave unguarded. Asmodeus strikes at thresholds, the moment something new and good begins. Azazel is where guilt goes when it is never honestly faced. Beelzebub is a god that fell and adapted and kept operating. And the one at the top looks most like truth. These are not fantasy categories, they are recognizable patterns. The ancient writers were not building mythology to frighten people into compliance, they were building a taxonomy of how human beings are taken apart, so the patterns could be identified and resisted. The answer is not fear, not obsession, accurate recognition. You cannot be deceived by something you can correctly name. The Shining One works in the darkness before dawn. He disappears when the real light comes. That is not supernatural consolation. That is a structural fact about the nature of the thing. Learn the difference between the morning star and the sunrise. We started in a graveyard. A man, broken chains, screams in the night. One question. What is your name? The name told everything. Scale, nature, method. And when Legion was confronted with something greater, it had nothing left to do but beg. 2,000 pigs ran off a cliff rather than carry what it was. The man sat quietly afterward, clothed in his right mind. The people who witnessed it were afraid, not of the man who had terrorized them, afraid of what had ended it in a moment. The text does not resolve that fear, it simply records it. That may well be the entire point precisely. Whether or not it frightens you probably depends on which side of that confrontation you think you are standing on.